Responsible is really two words, response and able. Those are good words. Able to respond sounds great. It goes beyond basic communication skills, as important as they are. Being able to respond is crucial for us when we contrast it with being reactive. So much of our society lives in constant reactivity. We may feel insulted, so we attack. A car cuts us off in traffic, and we honk or yell or come up with creative finger gestures, or not so creative. Someone may question our decision or our action, and immediately we're defensive. Reactivity. It can seem quite normal to us, since we are surrounded by people and our media which model this behavior almost constantly. So what's wrong with it? Reactivity is pricey. It costs us the ability to live by our values. You see, as Unitarian Universalists, we share values. The 7 principles are the core of who we are. We read them at the beginning of the service, remember that responsive reading? It starts with our first principle, promoting and affirming the inherent worth and dignity of every person. Reactivity keeps me from honoring the worth and dignity of the person I connect with if I am reactive. It happened to me too often when I was not watching out for it, and it still happens at times that I react or blurred or get defensive and not see the precious, valuable person who is actually right in front of me. If I am reactive or defensive, I am sure to miss part of what they're saying and a precious part of who they are. If I'm speeding up in traffic just so somebody cannot pass me, who's controlling my behavior? Who is really determining my speed? It is not based on my values then, or my desire for safety. It's purely reactive. In addition to missing the worth and dignity of the other, how am I showing compassion to others around me, accepting them or encouraging them to spiritual growth? Those are the second and third principles. Reactivity also never gets me to peace, justice, and equity for all, the sixth principle, either. Only the ability to respond gets me there. So how do I become able to respond? Responsible. The fourth principle gives us a hint. A free and responsible search for truth and meaning. There's that word again, responsible. The first truth I need comes through self-reflection and feedback from others. I need to realize what my strengths are and what my weaknesses and limitations are. And once I get to know those, it is my responsibility to work towards change if possible, but also to accept my limitations and love myself despite of them. I need to know my limits, and I need to lead with my strength, but also in vulnerability and honesty. I need to put energy into the issues I actually can affect rather than get frustrated and then get reactive, trying to change what I cannot control, which includes all other people, right? This is where prepositions make a powerful difference. Grammar matters. There is a big difference between being responsible for versus being responsible to someone or something. Let me give you an example. I was feeling poorly earlier last week. I had undergone surgery, and yes, with my new pacemaker, I'm now fully battery operated. But I caught a cold in the hospital, and my recuperation process was quite slow because of that. Now, whom or what was I responsible for? And whom or what was I responsible to? It was challenging. I usually forget to slow down enough to even consider this, I have to admit. But there I was, slow and low energy, which does not happen very often in my life. I had to face that I was responsible for myself. No one else was. And no one else was going to take that responsibility, not for feeling better, not for magically conjuring up more energy, but for acting responsibly. That included following doctor's orders, as well as listening to my body. When my mind was foggy and my body was weak, it was okay to rest and veg out a bit. That was actually the responsible thing to do for myself. I'm also responsible to my UU congregation, for instance, and to my job obligations. I do not need to keep my Sky Island UU congregation in Sierra Vista happy all the time, or Mountain Vista, my home congregation, either. That again would be impossible. If I tried, I would be taking responsibility for you and them. You see, there's a real difference. If I am responsible for someone or something, I need to have some sort of power or control. Like I could control whether I wore my arm sling for the recommended time and kept my wound dry according to my doctor's orders. I was being responsible for myself. I can also be responsible for the care of my cat, for instance, or for raising children before they grew up and moved out. Now I have responsibility to them, like responding when they call or text me or assisting them in the growing up process. I am no longer responsible for them, though, since I cannot be. No control, no power. Usually, these two types of responsibility do not conflict a lot, but last week they did. It brought up the serenity prayer. Some of you know that from a recovery process. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And oh, there is a difference. I could not control how strong or weak I felt. Very frustrating. And trying to control or ignore it would have made it worse. I could control when I rested and when I attempted to get some work done, though. That was in my power, and for that, I was responsible for. I remember the day I wrote this sermon. I had hoped and planned to get the sermon writing started in the morning, but I felt tired, achy, unfocused. I gave myself some time to relax, watch some TV, play some video games. After that, still felt out of it. I decided I would keep resting and keep checking in until I felt able to actually get some work done. I had made quite a few notes the weeks before, so I had a good starting point. But it ended up being after 2 p.m. before I finally tackled it, because suddenly I checked in responsibly and found, hey, I feel all right and I can't wait to start writing. That was the point when I indeed needed to write my sermon. The hours that might have seemed wasted on watching TV or playing my computer games beforehand were good ones. They had worked. They had allowed me to rest and recuperate enough for me to then be able to show up for the work I was responsible to. So being responsible for myself I could be responsible to my job and right. The fourth principle, the responsible search for truth, can also apply to our inner checking in process. This is the truth and meaning that is crucial to us. The search for truth and meaning is what we are about. That's what brings us together on Sunday mornings, isn't it? To find truth and meaning together. To make this life make more sense as we gather, and knowing we will be better equipped to do so in our covenant community of fellow seekers. We know that in connecting, in contemplating interesting topics, in sharing our joys and sorrows, in listening to reflections, we can feel comforted and find meaning in difficulties as well as in celebrations. Those are the things that allow us to make sense of things, of life, of the world. Now, what is a responsible search for truth and meaning? As a minister, I need to engage with this question on a weekly basis, like sermon writing, for example. That is a task I tackle regularly, which is about finding and expressing truth and meaning. First, I need to choose a topic and focus for my sermon. I need to be responsible in doing so. Otherwise, I would only speak about my favorite topics and only quote my favorite books. I need to address the varied interests and viewpoints of a Unitarian Universalist congregation and draw on various sources and inspirations. I need to research, searching for facts, inspiration, perspective, for truth and meaning as it emerges from the topic. Research can be challenging and at times can be frustrating and quite subjective. The other day, my son Stephen asked me for advice about writing a research paper that was due. His struggle was, but why do you have to keep stating the obvious in your paper? Half of this stuff is just common sense. Why can't I start from there? They want you to write like you don't even know anything. That struck me, because that is what responsible research is. Setting aside anything we know or assume we know. Setting aside our preconceived notions, and even our deeply held convictions and beliefs. Only if I take that step of emptying my mind first, would I actually be able to responsibly fill it. That can be a disturbing process. Questioning that we may be wrong and may have been wrong for a long time can be quite challenging. My faith has evolved and changed over the last many decades, and I remember the pain these changes caused when I had to question and at times reject what I held dearly as my beliefs before. Now that brings us to the next challenge, the search for truth and meaning. I make a point of wrestling with the topic. I need to ask myself again and again, how does this even affect me? How can this topic, this news, this information change my life? How does life make more sense when I'm done contemplating this? This is the make or break point in my sermon writing. You see, if it doesn't touch me, challenge me, inspire me, or change me, I figure I have no business talking about it. I need to set it aside or wrestle with it some more until it makes sense, until it is something that affects my sense of meaning in life, my process. So, you can tell I'm talking about responsibility, so this made some sense to me, otherwise I wouldn't be here. What did I learn? I learned that my aversion to the term comes from my childhood years, where I was not seen as a responsible kid in my family, so I rebelled to prove them right. this no longer serves me. Responsibility, the ability to respond, empowers me today. Seeing what I am responsible for and taking action and seeing who I am responsible to and letting go of outcomes, that strengthens me. Looking at areas in my life where I have failed to be present in a responsive way and seeing how this happens still at times humbles me and allows me to work on amends, self-acceptance, and yes, even forgiveness. In this shared ministry, we are called to support and encourage one another in our search for truth and meaning. I know the worship associates meet with the minister and come up with themes, topics, and guest speakers and give us the challenge and diversity a UU church deserves. And we may offer and attend educational activities in which we can learn together. But the real search for truth and meaning is more personal than that. Sometimes it happens in the service, but it might not be during the minister's reflection or sermon. It may happen when you gather the courage to speak at joys and sorrows, or when you hear someone open their heart and share. Or a story might inspire you and allow you to enjoy an insight, or even a feeling of comfort or relief or insight. The joint reading of the covenant may let it sink in that you are indeed not alone, but part of a dynamic, meaningful community. It might be during the welcome or during the coffee hour that your search for meaning is answered. All of these matter. It all comes down to sharing our lives, sharing our love, our inspiration, and whatever our spiritual practices may be. Are you up for it? Then I have one more challenge for you today. It has to do with stewardship. What is the truth and meaning in our pledge drive? All of us have a natural urge to give, to be part of something, and to have contributed to a worthwhile venture. There's meaning in contributing to Unitarian Universalism, to our church. The mission of Unitarian Universalism is one that inspires me. We have wonderful principles and goals. We make a point of welcoming all, celebrating diversity, and seeking justice. These things matter. This is more than a social club. Becoming a responsible member of a UU church is like switching from being a guest to being a host. Taking off the bib and putting on the apron. At first you come and you get welcomed, you are offered coffee, you get invited to attend events and participate in groups. You get to park in the guest parking spots real close. Once you join, you are the host. You may even choose to park quite far back in the lot to leave other spots for those who are finding us for the first time. You might find yourself preparing coffee or snacks or welcoming the newcomers. You contribute to keep this place going and growing. You have become a responsible member of this community. And you contribute because it matters, because it allows you a beautiful place and a loving community where others join you in a responsible search for truth and meaning. They may call you on being reactive at times, or may comfort you when you're in pain because you have been reactive or somebody has been reactive around you. Together, we can find responsibility once again, encourage each other to be able to respond with our hearts wide open. And then that's responsible stewardship, responsible Unitarian Universalism, responsible humanity. Let us be responsible UUs today. Search your heart, open your mind, allow new thought to enter and change us from the inside out. Let's share our lives, our thoughts, our hearts, even our financial resources with one another in this community. Let us be the inspiring, life-changing, responsible church we are called to be. So be it, blessed be, shalom.